You've heard her name countless times. Cleopatra, the legendary queen whose beauty and intellect changed the course of history. Images of her reclining luxuriously aboard lavish barges adorned with gold and gems immediately spring to mind. You picture pyramids, the Nile, and ancient Egypt's golden sands. But what if I told you everything you believed about Cleopatra's Egyptian heritage was actually a lie? Buckle up, because we're about to uncover the shocking truth behind the queen, who, despite ruling Egypt, wasn't Egyptian at all. Let's set the stage. It's 51 BC, and the ancient kingdom of Egypt is on shaky ground. Pharaoh Ptolemy XIII has just passed away, leaving behind a divided and vulnerable empire. His successors, a teenage boy, and his older sister, Cleopatra. But hold up, Cleopatra and her brother Ptolemy XIII weren't born of a line descending from the ancient Egyptian pharaohs. No, their heritage wasn't from beneath the shadow of the pyramids or the sands of the Sahara. Their ancestors came from somewhere far across the Mediterranean, a rugged land far removed from Egypt's shores. The shocking reality: Cleopatra was Greek. That's right, Greek. Cleopatra was part of a Macedonian dynasty known as the Ptolemies, established by Alexander the Great's general, Ptolemy I, around 300 years before her birth. This dynasty was fully Macedonian. For centuries, they fiercely maintained their Greek traditions, speaking Greek, celebrating Greek culture, and famously refusing to even learn the native Egyptian language. In fact, Cleopatra herself was one of the very few in her lineage who actually bothered to learn Egyptian. While she embraced Egypt's ancient traditions, in her veins ran pure Macedonian blood. But how did this happen? To understand Cleopatra's true heritage, we have to rewind the clock back to one of the most ambitious conquerors in history, Alexander the Great. When Alexander stormed into Egypt around 332 BC, the Egyptian people surprisingly welcomed him as a liberator from Persian rule. The Egyptians saw Alexander not as a foreign invader, but as a liberating hero. Alexander, enchanted by Egypt's mystique, embraced the role. He founded the great city of Alexandria, a city that would one day become Cleopatra's magnificent capital, and planted Greek culture deep into Egyptian soil. But Alexander's untimely death, at just 32 years old, shattered his vast empire, dividing it among his generals. Among them was Ptolemy I Soter, a cunning strategist who seized Egypt, crowned himself pharaoh, and established the Ptolemaic dynasty. Ptolemy I saw Egypt as his rightful inheritance, but he also saw its culture as foreign and separate. The Greeks viewed their culture as superior, so superior in fact, that they refused to mingle with their Egyptian subjects. They married within their own royal bloodlines, often brother marrying sister to maintain purity. This very practice would lead to Cleopatra's own tangled family tree, where sibling rivalry and ruthless ambition were as common as breakfast. Fast forward to Cleopatra's lifetime. Though she was born in Alexandria, one of history's most remarkable cities, filled with vast libraries, philosophers, poets, and bustling trade, her family clung stubbornly to their Greek heritage. They dressed in Greek robes, worshipped Greek gods, and spoke Greek in their marble palaces. Cleopatra, however, broke with this tradition in a shocking move. Unlike her predecessors, Cleopatra passionately embraced Egyptian culture and language, earning her the loyalty and adoration of her Egyptian subjects. Her charm and intellect bridged two vastly different worlds. Cleopatra skillfully crafted an image of herself, not merely as a Greek queen ruling over foreign territory, but as the divine reincarnation of Isis, the most beloved Egyptian goddess. Through clever marketing and political brilliance, Cleopatra blurred the lines between cultures, becoming a uniquely Egyptian queen despite her Macedonian DNA. But Cleopatra's Greek lineage would complicate her reign, fueling rivalries and power struggles. Her own brother and co-ruler, Ptolemy XIII, saw Cleopatra's popularity as a threat. A brutal sibling rivalry exploded, plunging Egypt into civil war. Cleopatra found herself exiled, driven out into the harsh Egyptian desert, forced to watch from afar as her brother's advisors took control of Egypt. But Cleopatra was no ordinary queen. With steely determination and legendary charisma, she saw an opportunity in Rome, Egypt's powerful neighbor, and the rising superpower of the Mediterranean. Enter Julius Caesar, Rome's most formidable general, politician, and statesman. Cleopatra saw in Caesar her chance to reclaim power. In a legendary move, she famously smuggled herself into his chambers, hidden within a rolled carpet. Caesar, enchanted by her beauty and brilliance, quickly became Cleopatra's lover and ally. With Caesar's formidable army, Cleopatra stormed back into Alexandria, defeating her brother's forces. Ptolemy drowned fleeing battle, and Cleopatra, triumphant, retook the throne. Yet Cleopatra's very Greek identity became weaponized by Roman propaganda. The Romans, suspicious of foreigners and deeply wary of Cleopatra's influence on Caesar, portrayed her as an exotic seductress, a foreign sorceress corrupting their leader. Roman poets and politicians whispered darkly of Cleopatra's mysterious alien origins, stoking fears and hatred among Rome's populace. They deliberately highlighted her foreignness, reinforcing her Macedonian roots, to paint her as untrustworthy, dangerous, and above all, an outsider. Tragedy struck when Julius Caesar was assassinated in 44 BC, plunging Cleopatra's Egypt once more into uncertainty. But Cleopatra refused to surrender. Once again, she skillfully aligned herself with Rome's most powerful leader, Mark Antony. Antony was the charismatic and rugged general, whose power rivaled that of Caesar himself. Together, Antony and Cleopatra formed one of history's most infamous love stories. They would forge a powerful alliance, combining Antony's Roman legions with Cleopatra's vast Egyptian wealth and resources. But Rome would never forgive Cleopatra's foreign heritage. Octavian, Caesar's adopted heir and Antony's great rival, used Cleopatra's Macedonian lineage as a political weapon. Octavian depicted Antony as bewitched by Cleopatra, enslaved by a cunning foreign enchantress. In a furious war of propaganda, Cleopatra's Macedonian roots were highlighted as evidence of danger, deception, and disloyalty. Rome's Senate declared war, not directly against Antony, but against Cleopatra, branding her an enemy of Rome. This propaganda war culminated at the fateful Battle of Actium in 31 BC. Cleopatra and Antony's combined fleets clashed with Octavian's mighty Roman navy. Despite their courage, Octavian's cunning tactics won the day. Defeated, Cleopatra and Antony retreated to Egypt, their world crumbling around them. Rome's legions marched inexorably closer, and Cleopatra's empire faced annihilation. In a final tragic act, Cleopatra took her own life, famously allowing an Egyptian cobra, an asp, to bite her. Her death marked the end of Egypt's independence and the beginning of Roman domination. Yet even after death, Cleopatra's complicated heritage continued to be twisted, rewritten, and mythologized by her Roman conquerors. History remembers her today as the legendary Egyptian queen, her image forever tied to pyramids, pharaohs, and the Nile. Yet the truth remains startling. Cleopatra's identity was more nuanced than any simple narrative could contain. Though her blood was Macedonian Greek, her heart and soul were thoroughly Egyptian. She mastered Egyptian language, adopted Egyptian customs, and even declared herself the reincarnation of the goddess Isis. Cleopatra was the ultimate chameleon, a woman who reinvented herself, blurred boundaries, and transcended ethnicity to forge an identity uniquely her own. Today, Cleopatra's story challenges us to rethink what it truly means to belong. Her identity transcends simple definitions of ethnicity, nationality, and blood. She was Greek and Egyptian, Macedonian and African, foreigner and native all at once. Cleopatra's life reminds us that identity isn't determined purely by blood, but by choice, action, and allegiance. Cleopatra wasn't born Egyptian, but she became Egypt's greatest queen. Her story proves that our origins don't limit who we can become. Cleopatra shaped her destiny by sheer force of will, brilliance, and passion. She embraced Egypt, and Egypt in turn embraced her forever. And that, perhaps, is Cleopatra's most astonishing legacy of all. So next time you picture Cleopatra aboard her golden barge sailing along the Nile, remember that behind the glittering myth is a woman whose true story is even richer, stranger, and more compelling than the legends ever told. Cleopatra wasn't Egyptian by birth, yet she became the immortal queen Egypt would never forget. Even now, thousands of years later, Cleopatra's heritage sparks fierce debate among historians. Some question whether there might have been Egyptian ancestors hidden within her family tree, adding yet another layer of mystery. Recent archaeological discoveries continue to provide tantalizing clues, including coins bearing Cleopatra's distinctly Macedonian features and statues blending Greek and Egyptian styles. Every new artifact unearthed reignites the controversy over her true lineage. Cleopatra's life reminds us that history is rarely black and white. Her legacy, wrapped in layers of intrigue, ambition, and controversy, continues to captivate and astonish, proving that the story of Egypt's greatest queen is far from over.